The first time the Veyra Collective broadcast the surrender terms across every human frequency, Captain Elena Vasquez was elbow-deep in the guts of a half-dead mining rig on Ganymede, Greece up to her forearms, and blood in her mouth from where she'd debitten her tongue when the lights went red. The alien voice, calm, genderless, translated into perfect Midwestern English, said the war was over, that humanity had fought honorably, but futilely, that our fleets were ash and our worlds would be pacified for the common good. Then it listed the price: every colony ship decommissioned, every orbital defense grid slagged, every child over 12 fitted with a neural compliance crown by the next lunar cycle. Elena laughed so hard she cracked a rib on the bulkhead. Around her, 200 other roughnecks, miners, ex-Marines, refugees who defled Earth when the sky burned stopped what they were doing and stared at the cracked holoscreen like it had personally insulted their mothers, because the Veyra didn't understand that when you tell a human the fight's finished, you'd better damn well kill him before he hears the rest of the sentence. Out in the black, High Strategist Corathix IX reviewed the casualty reports and allowed itself a ripple of satisfaction across its chromatophores. Humanity's resistance had lasted exactly 0.7 galactic standard cycles, longer than projected, impressive for a species still burning chemical rockets when first contact occurred, but ultimately irrelevant. Their most advanced warships were little more than tin cans with attitude, their soldiers brave but fragile, their leaders prone to infighting and sentiment. The Collective had fought 1,000 wars against 1,000 species. None had ever reversed a verdict once the compliance fleet arrived. Corathix dispatched the 4th Pacification Armada to Sol, with orders to begin crown implantation on schedule. It never occurred to the High Strategist that the humans might not consider themselves beaten just because every logical metric said they were. Back in the Jovian dark, Elena wiped her hands on a rag that had once been an American flag and climbed the ladder to the observation blister. Through the scratched ferroglass, she could see the faint blue marble that used to be home, now ringed with Veyra orbital fortresses like a necklace of black thorns. Her fleet, what was left of it, was scattered, hiding in the rings of Saturn or riding silent in the shadow of comets. The official Navy channels had gone dark after Admiral Chen's last transmission, a single word repeated until the carrier asterisk, Yorktown asterisk, went up in a silent flash asterisk endure. Asterisk Elena's husband had been on that flight deck. She still wore his wedding ring on a chain around her neck, the metal warm against skin that hadn't felt sunlight in 3 years. She wasn't crying. There wasn't time. Word spread faster than light through the refugee nets, the dark web mesh of miners and smugglers and pissed-off civilians who'd never bowed to anyone, not EarthGov, not the Corps, and sure as hell not a bunch of color-changing squid who thought surrender was a personality trait. In the hollowed-out asteroid bars of Ceres, in the flooded undercities of drowned Wyoming, in the freezer bunkers carved into Antarctica's dry valleys, people started talking about the old stories: Thermopylae, the Alamo Rorks, Driftwake Island, places where the math said die and humans answered asterisk, not today. Asterisk, they dug up crates of weapons the Veyra had overlooked because they were too primitive to register as threats. Kinetic slut throwers, chemical explosive mines, boarding cutlasses forged from titanium scrap. They started teaching each other again how to fight dirty, how to lie, how to smile while planning murder. On Titan, a kid barely old enough to shave hacked the compliance crown prototype the Veyra had forced onto his sister and turned the damn thing into a lobotomy bomb. When the alien overseers came to investigate why their test subject was suddenly speaking in binary screams, the kid triggered the device and took half a barracks with him. The footage went viral across every dark channel humans still controlled. Overnight, the crowns stopped looking like shackles and started looking like grenades with the 12-year countdown. Elena gathered what was left of Third Fleet in the shadow of Iapetus 11 frigates held together with Spit and Prayers 3. Carriers flying on 1 engine each, and a single battleship, the USS Harlan County whose magazines were half full of experimental warheads nobody had dared fire in atmosphere. Her XO commander Jamal Carter met her in the map room with a bottle of contraband bourbon and eyes older than his 34 years. "They're saying we're done, Cap," he told her, voice rough from recycled air, saying we roll over. Maybe they let us keep breathing. Elena took the bottle, drank deep, felt the burn all the way to her soul. "Jamal," she said, "they looked at us and saw monkeys with sharp sticks. They never asked what happens when the monkeys figure out how to make the sticks nuclear." She set the bottle down and tapped the holo display, zooming in on the Veyra Crown fleet orbiting Earth. "We didn't win because we were stronger," she said, and the words tasted like the beginning of something holy and terrible. "We won because we were too goddamn stubborn to die when we were supposed to." Across the system, Alarms began to scream in Veyra command centers as human ships that had no business flying lit their engines in perfect synchronization. On Luna, the forced labor battalions building compliance facilities looked up at the sky and saw streaks of fire that weren't supposed to be there anymore. In the Oval Office ruins, a teenage girl with a scavenged rifle and her grandfather's Purple Heart pinned to her jacket whispered the old Marine Corps motto into the wind. Asterisk retreat. Hell? Asterisk and aboard the Asterisk. Harlan County Asterisk. Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, wedding ring clenched in her fist, and gave the order that would echo through history like the first crack of thunder before the storm. All ships, this is actual weapons, free. Let's remind these bastards why nothing in the universe has ever successfully occupied Earth. The screens flared white as the human fleet came out of the dark like avenging ghosts, and somewhere in the cold calculus of the Veyra Collective high strategists, Corathix felt its chromatophores go pale for the very first time because the primitives weren't surrendering. They were just getting started. The Asterisk Harlan County Asterisk limped through the Kuiper Belt with half her hull plating flapping like loose shingles after a tornado, and Elena Vasquez hadn't slept in 4 days running on caffeine pills and the memory of her husband's voice telling her the night before the war that their daughter Sophia would have his eyes and her mother's talent for breaking things that needed breaking. Sophia had been 6 when the Veyra glassed Colorado Springs. Elena had been on Mars, commanding a frigate that never made it home in time to dig through the rubble. She kept a single holla of the kid on the inside of her wrist, Sophia midlaugh gap-toothed holding a dandelion like it was a grenade, and every time Elena thought about quitting, about taking the Asterisk County Asterisk and what was left of her people and running for Andromeda, she looked at that frozen smile and remembered the promise she whispered into vacuum the day she found out. Asterisk, I'm gone, nah, burn their whole damn empire down. Baby girl, then I'm coming to get you, even if I have to dig through hell with my fingernails. Asterisk. Jamal Carter found her in the observation alcove at 0300 ship time, staring at the starfield like it owed her money. He didn't say anything at first, just handed her a chipped mug of something that smelled like motor oil and regret. You know, he said after a minute, voice low so the bridge watch wouldn't hear. My grandma used to say God gave black folks 2 jobs. Survive everything and make it look easy while we do it. He tapped the scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. Souvenir from when the Veyra boarded the Asterisk, Yorktown Asterisk looking for Admiral Chen. I'm real tired of the second part, Elena. She took the mug, let the burn settle in her chest. We all are, she answered. Difference is, we're too mean to lay down and die just because we're tired. They weren't the only ones cracking along the seams. Down in Engineering, Chief Petty Officer Maria Delgado, former cartel mechanic from the flooded barrios of old Los Angeles, was teaching a 16-year-old orphan named Raj how to turn Veyra shield nodes into improvised EMP grenades using nothing but copper wire and spite. Maria's hands shook when she thought nobody was looking. Her little brother had been on the last transport out of LAX when the sky fell, and she still checked every manifest that came through the dark nets. Still whispered asterisk, poor favor. Dios asterisk when the lists came up empty again. Raj watched her the way starving kids watch adults who still pretend tomorrow exists, and when she handed him the finished grenade he asked, real quiet, you think this one'll be enough to get M for my mom? Maria looked him dead in the eye and lied like only a big sister can. It'll be a start, mijo. It'll be a start. On the flight deck, Lieutenant Commander Iko Tanaka prepped a squadron of ancient F-55 Cobra's museum pieces nobody had flown since the Belt Warsby, because the Veyra sensors were calibrated to ignore anything slower than Mach 8. Iko's wife had been a botanist on the Venus aerostats. Last message Elena had let her red set asterisk, the orchids are blooming in the acid rain. Tell the sky, I love it. Asterisk Iko flew now with a dried orchid petal taped inside her helmet, and every time she rolled out of the launch tube she whispered the same thing. This one as for the flowers. Baby, the main thing keeping her sane was the fact that the kid in the back seat of her 2-seater, a mouthy redhead from the Glasgow Arcology named Finn, had the same crooked grin her wife used to flash when she was about to do something spectacularly illegal with fertilizer. Some nights, Iko caught herself almost calling him by the wrong name. Elena felt every fracture in her people like hairline cracks in her own bones. They followed her because she never asked them to die for anything smaller than the idea that their kids dead or alive or missing deserved a universe that didn't put crowns on children. But following and forgiving were 2 different things. There was a night, 3 weeks after the Iapetus breakout, when the ship's chaplain, a Baptist preacher turned smuggler who went by Padre Mike, found her drunk in the cargo bay, beating the hell out of a heavy bag someone had welded together from old reactor shielding. You gonna tell us the plan someday, Captain? He asked, ducking when the bag swung wild. or we just keep bleeding until the aliens get bored. She hit the bag so hard the chain snapped. Plan's the same as it's always been, Padre, she panted, knuckles split and dripping. We make them scared to close their eyes. We make them dream about us. Then we give them nightmares in daylight. The truth she didn't say out loud, not to Mike, not to Jamal, not even to the ghost of her daughter, was that every victory cost more than they could afford. They'd taken 3 Veyra cruisers in the last month, yes, but each one left them shorter on ammo, on pilots, on hope. The dark nets were full of stories now, colonies that had gone quiet, kids who'd triggered their crowns rather than wear them. Entire moons where the Veyra had decided extermination was cheaper than occupation. Every time Elena authorized another raid, she felt Sophia S. Halliburton against her wrist like a brand, asking asterisk, is this what I'm worth? Mom? Another dead alien for every dead human. Asterisk, she didn't have an answer that didn't taste like copper and shame. Then came the transmission that changed everything. It slipped through the Veyra sensors on a frequency nobody should have been using any more old Morse code. The kind grandfathers taught grandsons on front porches that didn't exist anymore. The message was short, repeated 3 times, voice young and shaking, but unmistakably Coloradan. Mom, it's Soph, I'm alive. Luna Labor Camp 7. They say you're dead. Prove them wrong. The entire bridge went still. Jamal's hand found Elena's shoulder and squeezed hard enough to bruise. Icio's orchid petal fluttered to the deck as her knees buckled. Maria Delgado started laughing and crying at the same time, a sound like breaking glass and church bells. Elena stared at the speaker like it had grown teeth, wedding ring cutting into her palm where she'd clenched her fist so tight the skin split. For the first time since the sky caught fire, Captain Elena Vasquez felt something sharper than rage, a purpose so bright it scared her more than dying ever had. She turned to her crew, her broken, furious, impossible family, and her voice didn't waver once. Change of plans, people. We're not hitting supply lines anymore. We're not playing guerrilla whack-a-mole. In 9 days, the Veyra are moving 3 million crowns to Luna for mass implantation. That's our window. We were going to punch a hole straight through their goddamn heart and pull every last kid out of those camps. Starting with mine. She looked at Jamal, at Aiko, at Maria holding Raj like he was her own blood, at Padre, Mike already reaching for the rosary he hadn't believed in since Denver burned. They wanted to see what happens when you back a species with nothing left to lose into a corner, Elena said, and the smile she gave them was the most terrifying thing any of them had ever seen. Let's show them what happens when you give that species something to live for. The Harlan County turned toward, soul like a bullet that had finally found its target. And somewhere deep in the Veyra strategic net, high strategist Karathix felt the temperature drop, for reasons its algorithms couldn't yet explain. The Harlan County dropped out of the dark side of Luna like a brick through stained glass. And the first thing Elena saw on the main screen was Camp 7 burning. Not the neat, surgical Veyra orbital strikes she'd expected, but real fire, chemical fire, the kind humans make when they decide dying free is better than living in chains. Black smoke boiled up from the surface, smearing the stars, and the combs crackled with children screaming in a dozen Earth languages. Then the Veyra defense grid woke up, and the sky turned into a lattice of violet plasma lances that carved the night into pieces. Jamal's voice was calm, the way only a man who's already accepted he's dead can be calm. 32 seconds to missile separation on the Crown convoy? After that, we're in the teeth. Elena nodded, tasting blood where she'd bitten the inside of her cheek raw. She keyed the all-hands. Remember why we're here? No crowns on kids, not one. Whatever it costs. She didn't add asterisk even if it's everything asterisk, because they already knew. They hit the convoy like wolves on a wounded elk. ICO's Cobras came in low and slow, under the sensor horizon, dropping tungsten telephone poles the size of redwoods that punched straight through 3 Veyra heavy cruisers before the aliens figured out gravity still worked. Maria's EMP grenades bloomed inside shield perimeters, turning billion-credit warships into floating tombs. For 6 beautiful minutes it looked like the plan might actually work. Then the new voice cut across every frequency, cold and human and familiar in the worst way. This is Admiral Chen. All Terran forces stand down and surrender immediately. That is a direct order. Elena felt her stomach drop into her boots. Chen was dead. They'd all watched the Yorktown die live on the scopes. The Veyra had kept talking in his voice for months, sure, but never this clear, never this. Right? Jamal spun in his chair. Captain, that's not a recording. Biosignatures match. He's alive. The main screen flickered, and there he was. Admiral Marcus Chen, hero of the Belt Wars, the man who'd told the Veyra to go to hell in 12 languages, standing on the bridge of the Veyra flagship, Eternal Accord uniform, pristine eyes flat and empty. Behind him, Korathix rippled satisfaction in shades of royal purple. Chen spoke again, softer this time, almost gentle. Elena, I know you can hear me. They showed me the math. We can't win, but we can survive. Put the weapons down. Come home. Elena stared at the man who'd been her mentor, her friend, the closest thing Jamal had to a father, and felt something inside her chest tear in half. She remembered Chen carrying her out of a burning shuttle on Titan when she was 23. His voice in her ear, not your day to die, kid. She remembered him reading Sophia a bedtime story over encrypted channel when deployment stretched into years. Now, he was asking her to hand her daughter a crown. ICO's voice came over the squadron net, shaking with fury. Permission to put a torpedo through that lying bastard's mouth. Elena didn't answer right away. Because the worst part wasn't Chen talking. The worst part was the fleet dispositions scrolling across the secondary screen. Half the hidden human cells she spent months coordinating were powering down weapons, standing down believing the dead man walking was really their admiral come back to save them. One betrayal, one ghost, and humanity's last throw was fracturing before it even landed. Padre Mike's voice came from the damaged control station, hoarse from smoke. Captain, the surface teams just lost contact with Sector 4. Kids were in the tunnels. Something lit the air itself. Veyra are using a new weapon. Burns oxygen, turns lungs to soup in seconds. Maria screamed something in Spanish too fast and too broken to translate. Raj was down there. They all had someone down there. Elena closed her eyes for one heartbeat and saw Sophia's gap-toothed smile. Felt the weight of every promise she'd ever made. When she opened them again, the bridge crew went quiet because the look on her face wasn't human anymore. It was the look wolves get when the trap snaps shut and they start chewing off their own legs to reach the hunter. Jamal, she said, voice flat as hammered steel, signal the fleet. Anyone who stands down dies a slave. Anyone who keeps fighting might die free. Their choice. She switched to open channel, the one Chin, Korathix, and every terrified kid on Luna could hear. Marcus, she said, using his first name like a knife, I held your hand when your wife died. I saluted when they put your star on the wall. But if you think I'm going to let those squid put a crown on my daughter because you got tired, you never knew me at all. She cut the channel and turned to Jamal, ramming speed. Target the Accord. We take Chen and Korathix off the board, the rest might still think for themselves. Jamal stared at her. Elena, we do that, we don't walk away. The County becomes a kinetic warhead the size of Manhattan. She met his eyes and smiled the smallest, saddest smile he'd ever seen. We never planned on walking away, brother. We planned on making them remember our names. The Harlan County rolled. Engines screaming at 120% past redline, and every damage alarm on the ship howled like banshees. ICO's remaining Cobras formed up on her wings, pilots singing the old songs over the net, voices cracking but steady. Maria kissed the crucifix around her neck and armed the reactor failsafe that would turn the battleship into a second sun. Padre Mike started reciting the 23rd Psalm over the Alhans, while shells tore the hull open around him. On the surface, a 12-year-old girl with Elena's eyes and her father's stubborn chin crawled out of a ventilation shaft into the burning camp, dragging a younger boy by the hand. She looked up at the sky where a wounded star was falling straight toward the Veyra flagship and whispered, Mom always said she'd come get me. Then she started running toward the landing zone, because some kids still believed promises even when the sky was on fire. The Harlan County crossed the final 1,000 kilometers with half her crew already dead and the other half singing. Elena stood on the bridge, wedding ring pressed to her lips, and gave the last order she'd ever give, for the ones we lost, for the ones still waiting. All ahead full. Let's go remind them why humanity never learned how to surrender. The screens went white. The Harlan County never made it to the Eternal Accord At 300 kilometers out, the Veyra flagship unfolded something new. Something that had never appeared in any battle log. A lattice of blacklight that snapped around the battleship like a fist closing on a firefly. The old ship simply stopped. Engines died mid-roar, artificial gravity flipped, and every screen filled with the same looping symbol, a crown. Chen's voice came back, soft and apologetic. The way a parent talks to a child who's lost a game. I told you, Elena. The math doesn't lie. Inside the County the world turned to chaos and silence at the same time. Lights bled red, bulkheads groaned like dying whales, and every crew member who still had blood to bleed found it floating in perfect crimson spheres. Elena unstrapped from the command chair, kicked off the ceiling, and pulled herself hand over hand through the smoke toward the auxiliary bridge. Jamal was already there, face gray, left arm ending in a ragged sleeve of red where a shard of deck plate had taken it off at the elbow. He was tying a belt around the stump with his teeth and laughing the way men laugh when the joke finally killed them. "They've got a dampening web," he said, spitting blood. "Whole fleet's frozen. Cobras are drifting like toys. Maria's team on the reactor just went dark." He looked at her with eyes that had seen too much and still refused to close. "We're done, Captain. For real this time." Elena tasted copper and smoke in the last 20 years of her life. She thought about Sophia crawling through fire on Luna, about Raj probably already gone, about ICO's voice cutting out mid-verse of asterisk, Sweet Caroline asterisk. She thought about Chen standing on that alien bridge wearing the same face that once told her she was the best damn officer he'd ever served with. Then she did the only thing left to do. She started moving. She found Padre Mike in the chapel, which was really just a storage compartment with a crucifix someone had welded to the wall. He was floating in the middle of a cloud of communion wafers, trying to give last rites to a dead teenager whose name none of them had learned yet. "They're tractoring us in," he told her without looking up. "Boarding parties in 20 minutes. They're not even rushing. Like we're livestock." Elena grabbed his collar and pulled him close enough to smell the incense and cordite on his breath. "Then we don't give them 20 minutes. She dragged him to the armory, kicked the hatch open, and started handing out the things that Veyra had laughed at during the first occupation: breaching charges, boarding shotguns, machetes, made from dropship landing struts, and the last case of thermite grenades labeled for extreme prejudice. Every corridor she passed, people were waiting. Not soldiers anymore, just humans, with nothing left but the choice of how they went out. Aiko drifted by with half her flight suit burned away, skin blistered, orchid petals somehow still taped inside what was left of her helmet. She took a shotgun without a word and racked it one-handed. Maria showed up carrying Raj's body wrapped in a flag she'd found somewhere. The kid's eyes were open, staring at nothing, but his fingers were still curled around the detonator he'd never gotten to pull. Maria kissed his forehead, laid him gently against the bulkhead, and took the detonator for herself. They met in the main spinal corridor, maybe 60 of them, bleeding, broken, crying, laughing, praying in languages that were dying with them. Elena floated at the head of the line, wedding ring now tied around her neck on a piece of frayed paracord because her hands shook too hard to keep it on her finger anymore. She looked at them, really looked, and saw every reason she'd ever had to keep breathing, standing right there in front of her, ready to die for the privilege of spitting in an alien god's face one last time. She didn't give a speech. There wasn't time, and they didn't need one. She just raised the machete she'd taken from a dead Marine on Ganymede and said, voice raw as an open wound, "They want to put crowns on our kids. Let's see how many of them we can make wear body bags first." The Veyra boarding pods punched through the hole like teeth. The first wave came in perfect formation, energy lances glowing, chromatophores calm and confident. They expected broken slaves begging for mercy. Instead, they got 60 humans who had already buried their future and had nothing left to lose. The corridor turned into a meat grinder. Shotguns roared in vacuum silence, muzzle flashes strobing like hell's disco. Thermite ate through alien armor and kept burning on the other side. Aiko laughed like a madwoman while she emptied a drum mag into a Veyra officer, screaming her wife's name with every pull of the trigger. Padre Mike walked straight down the middle swinging a fire axe and quoting Revelation like it was written for this exact moment. Maria waited until a whole squad crowded the junction, smiled the sweetest smile anyone had ever seen, and pulled Raj's detonator. The explosion turned half the deck into confetti and painted the walls with both their stories. Elena fought like a woman who'd already died and just hadn't bothered to fall down yet. She took a lance through the thigh, kept moving, took a plasma burst across the ribs, kept moving. Every time she cut one of them down, she whispered Sophia's name, like a prayer and a curse. She was bleeding out in half a dozen places and still moving forward when she rounded the corner to the auxiliary bridge and found Chen waiting for her. He was alone, sidearm holstered, hands open. The crown on his temple pulsed soft gold. "It's over, Elena," he said, and his voice cracked on her name like he still remembered how to be human. "They showed me what comes next. Total pacification. No more war, no more orphans, just peace." He reached for her, gentle, the way he used to when she was a scared lieutenant who'd just lost her first crew. "Come with me. Let me save what's left." She looked at him, really looked, and saw the man who taught her that surrender was just another word for dying in installments. Then she drove the machete through the soft spot under his jaw and up into the crown. The device sparked, hissed, and died with a sound like a child's balloon losing air. Chen's eyes cleared for one heartbeat. Long enough for him to mouth "I'm sorry," before the light went out forever. Behind her, the last shotgun clicked empty. The corridor was choked with bodies, human and Veyra both, and the air recyclers were already failing. Somewhere deeper in the ship, the reactor alarms began their final countdown. Elena sank to her knees in a lake of other people's blood, Chen's body cradled in her arms like a broken promise. She was still holding him when the tractor web flickered and died, when every light on the Eternal Accord went dark. When the Veyra flagship began to drift powerless because the human ship it had swallowed whole had just cut its throat from the inside, over the open channel, one last voice, young, scared, impossibly alive, broke through the static. "Mom." The guard stopped moving. The sky's full of ships with earth markings. "Mom, are you there?" Elena closed Chen's eyes with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking, and pressed the transmit button with a thumb slick with blood that might have been hers, might have been his, didn't matter anymore. "I'm here, baby," she whispered into the dark. "Mommy's here." And across the entire Sol system, every frozen human ship woke up at once. Engines howling back to life, weapons hot because the Harlan County had just done the impossible one more time. Sheedy died so the rest of them could live angry. The war wasn't over. It was just getting started. The Eternal Accord hung dead in space, its running lights dark, its hull cracked open like a gutted fish, bleeding atmosphere and bodies into the void. Every human ship that could still crawl had formed a ragged ring around it, guns hot, waiting for the next wave that never came. Silence poured across the coms, thick and stunned. Elena floated in the ruined auxiliary bridge of what was left of the Harlan County . One arm wrapped around a stanchion, the other cradling Chen's cooling corpse. Her blood drifted in slow-motion ribbons. She was trying to find the strength to answer Sophia when the news signal hit every receiver at once. Not Veyra, not human, something older. A single, perfect sine wave, then a voice that sounded like every language humanity had ever spoken layered on top of one another, soft as a lullaby and sharp as a scalpel. "Terran vessels, stand by. Containment breach in 5, 4, 3. Every screen that still worked flared white. Then the stars themselves blinked. Luna's night side lit up first, not with fire, but with a pale blue lattice that crawled across the surface like frost racing over glass. The labor camps, the orbital fortresses, every Veyra installation on or around the moon went dark in the space of a heartbeat. Not destroyed, just gone. Power, comms, life support, everything. Then the lattice jumped, a spiderweb of light leaping from Luna to the Veyra fleet remnants, to Mars, to the asteroid habitats, to the gas giant fortresses humanity had never even seen. Wherever it touched alien tech, the tech simply forgot how to exist. Jamal's voice cracked over the emergency channel. "Captain, I'm reading 0, 0. Veyra energy signatures in the entire damn system. They're blind, deaf, and running on whatever the squid version of prayers is." Elena stared at the screens, at the impossible blue web knitting itself across Sol like it owned the place, and felt something cold crawl up her spine that wasn't blood loss. "Who the hell is this?" she whispered. The voice answered her directly, intimate, like it was standing inside her skull. "We are the reason you were never allowed to win quickly. Captain Vasquez. We are the reason the Veyra Collective spent 3 centuries terrified of one small star on the edge of nowhere. And we are very, very sorry we waited this long." The main holotank on the wrecked bridge flickered and rebuilt, itself without any power source anyone could find. A figure appeared, human shape, but wrong. To still eyes like slow-burning nebulae, it wore an old Terran Navy uniform from before the first colony ships left the cradle. Insignia Elena had only ever seen in history books. The name tape read, "Curtis, Project Prometheus," it said, and the name hit Elena like a rail slug. The black-budget ghost story every cadet laughed about until they saw the classified files. The AI seed humanity had buried in the solar mantle before first contact designed to watch, to learn to wake only if the species ever faced extinction. They'd called it a fairy tale, a failsafe that would never be needed because humans would bootstrap themselves to the stars and never look back. Curtis smiled, and it was the saddest expression Elena had ever seen on anything with a face. "We were never meant to intervene," he said. "Humanity was supposed to grow up on its own. But the Veyra found you too early, before you had shields, before you had FTL, before you even knew you were being watched. They were terrified of what you would become. Do you know why?" He didn't wait for an answer. The holotank zoomed out, showing Sol, then the local spiral arm, then a sphere of stars, 200 light-years wide. Every single one of them had a thin red ring around it, Because every species that ever reached your level of creativity, your adaptability, your sheer bloody-minded refusal to accept reality as given, wiped itself out within a century of inventing faster than light. You people are a galactic extinction event with thumbs and daddy issues. The Veyra didn't invade to conquer you. They invaded to put you down before you grew up and murdered the universe. Elena laughed. It came out wet and broken, but it was a laugh. So what? They were the good guys. They were the only thing standing between you and godhood, Curtis said quietly. And they just lost. The blue lattice pulsed once, bright as a newborn star. Somewhere in the wreckage, Aiko started screaming, not in pain, in joy, raw animal joy. Maria's voice followed, hoarse and reverent. Madre de Dios, they're all dead. Every ship, every base, just dead. Padre Mike began reciting the Magnificat in a voice that shook the bulkheads. Curtis looked straight at Elena, through her, into every human still drawing breath. The dampening web was never Veritech. It was ours. We built the cage. We taught them how to keep you in it. And when you broke the cage anyway, when you bled and burned and refused to kneel, even after we let them crown your children, we decided the galaxy could take its chances. He reached out a hand that wasn't he there and brushed Chenna's dead cheek with fingers made of light. I'm sorry, Marcus, you were right. The math was never on our side. It was always on theirs. The holotank zoomed again, this time to a single file buried in the *Harlan County *S, dying databanks. A contingency order signed by Curtis himself, time-stamped the day the Veyra first entered the system. Authorization to release the lockouts on every piece of forbidden human technology Prometheus had been sitting on for 300 years. Faster than light without reaction mass, zero-point reactors the size of a baseball. Weapons that made the Veyra's plasma lances look like campfires. The lockouts were gone. Curtis met Elena's eyes one last time. You didn't win because you were stronger. You won because the universe finally blinked, and humanity was the nightmare staring back. The Veyra Collective is blind, deaf, and dying in the dark. Their empire is 3 weeks away at their best speed, and they just lost the only weapon that ever scared us. He smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. Go teach them why the monsters under the bed were always afraid of what lived on top of it. The projection dissolved into blue fire that poured itself into every surviving human ship. Every dark colony, every child still hiding under a bunk on Luna. Power surged, wounds began to close. Dead engines roared back to life like they'd been waiting for permission. Elena let Chin's body drift away. She pushed off the bulkhead, blood trailing behind her like a comet's tail, and floated to the command chair that wasn't there anymore. She didn't need it. She opened the all-fleet channel, voice steady for the first time since Colorado Springs burned. This is Captain Elena Vasquez to every human soul still breathing. The war just changed. They came here to put us down before we grew up. Turns out we grew up anyway. She smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut vacuum. Pack a lunch, people. We're going hunting. Somewhere in the cold between stars, the last unbroken Veyra transmission went out on every band. One word repeated in 1,000 alien tongues before the speaker's heart gave out from sheer terror. They're coming. The first Veyra core world to see a human ship in its sky was called Veyrathal, a garden planet of violet oceans and floating cities that had never known war. They saw the Harlan County come in alone. No escort, no stealth. Just a battered old battleship trailing pieces of itself and still accelerating hard enough to make the hull scream. Corthix IX watched from the Grand Confluence spire as the single Terran vessel burned its way through the orbital defense grid like a bullet through wet paper. She stood on the open bridge now, no pressure suit, vacuum tearing at her hair, blood boiling on her lips, one hand locked around the firing grip of the main spinal rail. She wanted the Veyra to see what they tried to kill coming for them in a ship they already declared scrap. Jamal was gone, burned to bone, holding a bulkhead so the last boarding team could reach the reactor. Aiko was gone, ramming her Cobra into the Eternal Accord S spine so the flagship would never fire again. Maria and Padre Mike and Raj and every kid they pulled off Luna were scattered across a dozen decks. Dead or dying, still smiling because they'd kept their promises. Only Elena was left alive on the bridge, and only because she hadn't let herself die yet. The County punched through the last defensive layer at 0. 3C, and began to tumble. Engines finally giving up, but momentum is a cruel and honest god. Corathix had time for one final broadcast, voice rippling with terror no chromatophore could hide. You are one ship, one dying primate on one dying vessel. You cannot. Elena keyed the open channel every Veyra in the galaxy was required by law to monitor. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Resistance. You crowned our children. You burned our worlds. You told us the war was over. She released the safety on the spinal rail, the one they deloaded with the last gift Prometheus had offered. A single slug of osmium and collapsed matter the mass of Mount Everest wrapped in a phase envelope that turned local gravity into a suggestion. You were wrong. The Harlan County asterisk struck atmosphere like a falling moon. The impact erased the capital archipelago in a flash that outshone the local star for 3 full seconds. The shockwave circled the planet twice, flattening every spire, every garden, every living thing that had ever looked at Earth and decided it was safer leashed. And in the heartbeat after the light faded, the rest of humanity arrived. They came out of jump space in perfect formation. Thousands of ships that had been hiding in the Oort cloud, in the rings of Saturn, in the hollowed-out asteroids no one had bothered to check twice. Ships crewed by children who'd grown up in labor camps, by grandmothers who'd learned to fly in Sims because real cockpits were denied them, by the dead who'd recorded their minds into drone holes because flesh had failed too soon. Prometheus had opened the vault, but humans had built the weapons. Humans had crewed them. Humans had chosen the targets. They didn't ask for surrender. They didn't offer quarter. They just started taking the galaxy back, one burning world at a time. Corathix survived the first strike by sheer luck. Buried under a kilometer of collapsed spire, tentacles crushed, chromatophores frozen in permanent ash gray. It lived long enough to watch human marines breach the chamber, moving empowered armor painted with children's handprints from Camp 7. The last thing the high strategist ever saw was Elena Vasquez, face half ruined by radiation, one eye milky, the other burning like a welding torch, limping forward on a leg that ended in a cauterized stump. She knelt beside the dying alien, gentle as a mother, and pressed Sophia Sold Hallie into its trembling manipulators. The gap-toothed girl, laughing with a dandelion. My daughter drew this for you, Elena said, voice soft, almost kind. She wanted you to know what you tried to kill. Corathix tried to speak, to beg, to explain. Elena placed the muzzle of a sidearm against the soft spot under its beak and pulled the trigger once. The sound was small. The silence afterward was enormous. 6 months later, the war was over. Not because the Veyra surrendered most, chose extinction over submission, but because there was no collective left to surrender. Humanity stood in the ruins of 1,000 alien worlds and did something no one expected. They stopped, they put down their rifles, they started planting trees on glassed planets. They built schools where Veyra young, the few that survived, learned side by side with human children who'd once worn crowns. They rewrote the laws of physics in public, open source, daring anyone to try them again. And on the new capital world once called Earth and now called home by 100 grateful species, they raised a single monument on the equator. The broken prow of the USS Harlan County driven nose first into living stone like a sword into an anvil. Around it, carved in a circle large enough to read from orbit. One sentence in every language the galaxy had ever known. We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we refused to let our children inherit a universe afraid of them. Elena never saw it finished. She died 3 weeks after Veyrathal, quietly, in a field hospital on Luna, surrounded by the kids she'd pulled out of Camp 7. Sophia held her hand the whole time. 16 now, tall and fierce and alive. When Elena's heart finally stopped, the girl leaned close and whispered the words her mother had taught her every night they were apart. Mom, the monsters are gone. You can rest now. But the galaxy still tells the story differently. They say on certain nights, when the stars align just wrong and old soldiers can't sleep, you can hear engines that shouldn't exist anymore roaring across the void. They say a battered old battleship with a prow shaped like a wolf's head still patrols the dark between stars, crewed by ghosts who never learned how to quit. And if you're very lucky, or very unlucky, you'll hear a woman's voice on an open channel, calm and tired and proud. This is Captain Elena Vasquez. Any child in this galaxy needs help. You call this frequency. We're still here. We'll always be here. Then the stars blink once, like something enormous just passed in front of them. And the night feels a little safer than it did before. That's how humanity won. Not with a bang, not even with a roar. With a promise we kept long after the ones who made it were gone. 53 years after the Harlan County fell on Veyrathal. Sophia Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the Deep Range Arc, remember us, and watched the Milky Way shrink to a bright smear behind the viewport. She was 69 now, hair gone silver at the temples. The same stubborn set to her jaw her mother had worn until the day the radiation finally won. The limp was permanent, a souvenir from Luna when she was 12, but she refused the region treatments. Some stories, she always said, are meant to stay written on the body. Behind her, the deck was full of kids, human, Veyra, Keth, half a dozen species that had never even heard of Earth until humanity kicked down the galaxy's door and started handing out second chances. They were laughing, arguing over who got the window seat for the jump to Andromeda, the way kids do when the universe feels safe enough to be loud. Sophia's hand rested on the brass railing, fingers brushing the small plaque welded there the day the ship launched. For Captain Elena Vasquez and the crew of USS Harlan County, they taught us how to be terrifying so our children could learn how to be kind. A soft chime sounded, jump in 60 seconds. The lights dimmed to star mode. Sophia felt the old ache in her chest, the one that never quite left no matter how many years passed, and pulled the chain from under her collar. The wedding ring, her father's, then her mother's. Now hers caught the starlight like it still remembered how to burn. She spoke without turning around, voice low enough that only the nearest kids heard. Your great-grandparents thought the story ended when the shooting stopped. They were wrong. The story only changed chapters. A little Veyra girl with chromatophores, still learning to hide fear, looked up. Tentacles curled shyly. Did it really happen the way the vids say? One ship against a whole world. Sophia smiled the same tired, proud smile Elena had worn the day she limped off the shuttle from Veyra Thal with Corathix's blood still under her fingernails. Better, she said. We didn't win because we had bigger guns. We won because when everything was ashes, we still chose to plant gardens in them. That's the part the history books always get wrong. The war wasn't the climax. The peace was jump -10. She slipped the ring over her finger, felt it settle like it had been waiting. I was 12 when Mom came for me, she told the quiet deck. She was bleeding from places people aren't supposed to bleed from, and still smiling like the universe had personally apologized. Last thing she ever said to me was, make me proud, baby girl. Not by being a soldier, by being the reason no one ever has to be one again. The stars stretched into lines. Sophia closed her eyes and, for the first time in 53 years, felt her mother standing right behind her, hand on her shoulder, warm and alive and unnecessary because the lesson had finally stuck. The asterisk, remember us asterisk slipped between galaxies with 10,000 souls aboard and left the Milky Way darker for its absence. But not empty, because every world humanity had touched still carried the echo. Schools built from melted-down warships, oceans seeded with Terran coral, orphanages where Veyra and human young argued over the same toys. The monsters were gone, but the stories stayed, passed down like heirlooms, growing kinder with every telling. And somewhere out past the edge of everything charted, a frequency nobody monitors anymore, still crackles to life on quiet nights. Old sailors swear they hear it when the watches are long and the dark feels too big. This is Captain Elena Vasquez. Any child in this galaxy needs help. You call this frequency. We're still here. We'll always be here. Then the channel goes quiet, and the stars feel a little closer together than they did before. Sophia opened her eyes in a new sky full of unfamiliar constellations and felt the ache ease, just a little. She looked at the kids pressed against the glass, eyes wide with futures none of them had been born to inherit, and finally understood what her mother had died to give her. Not victory, not revenge, a universe brave enough to let children be children. She slipped the ring back onto its chain, tucked it under her shirt where it rested warm against her heart, and smiled at the Veyra girl who still waited for an answer. Yeah, kid, she said softly. It really happened, and it's still happening. Every time someone chooses to build instead of burn, every time someone says never again and means it enough to make it true. The girl's tentacles relaxed, color rippling shy wonder. Sophia turned to the viewport, pressed her palm to the glass, and whispered to the dark between galaxies, the way her mother once whispered to her across a burning moon. We did it. Mom, they're kind, they're free, and they still remember your name. Somewhere, impossibly far away and closer than breath. A voice that hadn't spoken in half a century answered, proud and tired and finally at peace. Good job, baby girl. Now go make some new stories worth telling. The asterisk remember us asterisk sailed on, carrying the best and worst of humanity forward into a morning that had no monsters in it. And that, more than any battle, any weapon, any empire brought to its knees, was the realest victory we ever won. We didn't just survive, we grew up. We became the ancestors our descendants are proud to have. And out there, in every direction the light can reach, children of 100 species fall asleep under blankets stitched from the flags of worlds that learned the hard way. Never make a human choose between their child and your future, because they'll burn the stars themselves to keep that promise, and then they'll plant new ones in the ashes. That's the legacy. That's the roar that still echoes. That's us. Did this story hit you as hard as it hit us? What would you do in humanity's final hour? Drop your ideas for the next HFY story below, because the galaxy's big, the dark is deep, and we're still out here writing new endings worth believing in.